Welcome to the second annual Urban Transformation Forum. Please silence your cell phones. The program is about to begin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tom Cochran. I'm the CEO and Executive Director of the United States Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C. We are 87 years old. We were formed in 1932, and we're so pleased to be here at the Wagner School tonight at NYU. Mayor Wagner was a president of this organization, and it's the only urban school in the world named after a United States mayor. We're very pleased to be here. Let's give it a big hand for the Wagner School. We appreciate very much tonight the Bonet Foundation for supporting our meeting on urban transformation. We meet tonight at a very serious moment. Today, the impeachment meeting began, the inquiry into that issue. We have bad weather. We have uprisings in Bolivia. A lot of things going on in the world. But every night and every day, there's a mayor in this world who's making sure that our cities are safe, that the poor are protected, all people are protected, and we'll make sure that we do the best we can for serving the people in this United States and around the world. I have just returned from Durban, South Africa for the fourth meeting of the Global Parliament of Mayors. And tonight we have three issues that we're discussing. One is immigration, one is disaster relief, and the other is the digital. 3 days ago in Durban, Africa, we were discussing those same issues. Migration is a big issue for Europe, and immigration, they call it migration, we call it immigration. The immigration issue is a big issue for us. Disaster relief could be Katrina, could be a flood, could be tsunami, could be a mass shooting in Las Vegas, a mass shooting in Dayton, a mass shooting in El Paso. And who do they turn to when this happens? It's the mayor. It's the mayor of Dayton. It's the mayor of El Paso. It's the mayor of Las Vegas. It's the mayor of New Orleans when we have a flood, incredible flood, Katrina. On the whole question of digital, as we know, after Charlottesville, 357 mayors signed on to a letter decrying what happened in Charlottesville. This past summer, over 300 mayors signed a letter, digital letter, for background checks. In 1945, Mr. Dodd was there, the great senator who later he was a lawyer for the Nuremberg trials. He wrote his wife a letter. It took the letter 4 months to get to Connecticut. But today, we have the internet. We have this great internet where we can be advocacy. We have advocacy where we're making things happen because it's instantaneous. So tonight, we come to let you know that while nothing is happening in Washington, we're getting it done at the local level. We're getting it done on climate, we're getting it done to help the poor. We're getting it done to give you the cleanest water on earth. And we're getting it done to do the best we can for smart cities, smart transportation, because that's where it's all about. And wherever America is going, it's the cities of America that's going to get us there. So with that, I thank you for, I thank NYU again. We have a great partnership. Let us continue. And I'd like to bring up David Burnett from the Burnett Foundation to thank him also for his continuing contribution to our efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. It's an honor to be here again this year with everyone. At this same event last year, actually walking over, I was introduced to a very nice guy, young man who just happened to be the mayor of South Bend. We had a great conversation, but a lot can happen in a year. I really did have a good conversation with Mayor Pete. As we were chatting, I mentioned to him a family in South Bend I've known for quite a long time. Well, it turned out that Pete knew the same family, and my first reaction was, wow, what are the odds? But then I thought, of course he does. He is the mayor, and that is what mayors do. You know the names and stories of the people you serve. You know their history, you know the good and the bad, you know their struggles, and you know their success. And mayors strive every day, as Tom says, to make their lives better and their world more safe and secure within the city limits. And those are the very reasons why back in 2006, the Burnett Foundation began our Mayoral Fellows program, so that the best and brightest graduate students in public policy, those who are passionate about cities and the impact that public policy has within cities, could graduate from NYU, UCLA, and the University of Michigan with a degree, public policy degree, and we funded their tuition and provided a stipend so they could work in City Hall while they were in graduate school. These students were prepared to hit the ground running, unencumbered by student debt, to work alongside mayors on the biggest issues and challenges facing our nation's cities. And because all good schooling should involve travel and a field trip, each January we take our crop of mayoral fellows to the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C., so that they can meet you, the mayors, and your fellow mayors from across the entire country. Our motto at the foundation is improving society through social activism. And we all probably have a different view of what social activism really means. Social activism for me means that when I got a call from Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa shortly after he was inaugurated as mayor in Los Angeles, and he wanted to talk about transportation infrastructure, I said, Mayor, transportation is a social justice issue. It's all about enabling people to live where they can afford to live and work where there are jobs. There are those of us, sure, that get locked up in traffic, but that's not what transportation is about. Transportation is about equality and economic equality. Social activism is when affordable housing advocates join forces with urban planners to make sure that not one more night goes by where one of our own is left to sleep on a cold sidewalk or under the highway. And social activism is when public school teachers and environmental activists and City Hall insiders find common cause of getting the lead out of our drinking water. So in my case, being a social activist and a philanthropist means bringing together world-class schools of public policy deserving students and you, our mayors. It's an honor to support this important conversation tonight and a joy to be with everyone. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Gordon Campbell, professor of practice here at NYU Wagner School of Public Service. And on behalf of Wagner, it's my honor and pleasure to welcome you to tonight's second annual Urban Transformation Forum. Thank you to our partners, Tom Cochran and the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and to David Burnett and the Burnett Foundation. At NYU Wagner, we have a long history in public service, both here in New York, across the country, and for that matter, around the world. Being embedded in New York City, we infuse an urban perspective into everything we teach our students. Take almost any public service issue, affordable housing, education disparities, transportation, infrastructure, housing, poverty, and you'll find cities grappling with it. But our urban character at NYU derives not only from our location, but from our scholarly strength. As our president of NYU, Andy Hamilton, says time and time again, NYU is all things urban. We recently helped launch NYU's Urban Initiative, which brings together faculty from across academic fields in NYU's schools and institutes to work together and come together on important urban issues. We know that in order for our students to drive positive change in their communities, they must have a deep understanding of the urban context. And conversations such as tonight are so important, and they're so vital to helping us think through the big and challenging urban issues in public service today. And I'll momentarily invite our guests, our mayors, up for the discussion. But first, NYU Wagner and our co-sponsors all agree that a vital part of the forum would be hearing from you, the audience. And there are two ways you can take part. One, you can use the hashtag #ChangingCities, or two, you can use an index card, an old-fashioned index card, and write out a question. And if you have a question, just raise your hand with the card, and Usher will pick it up. Or if you don't have a card, an usher will give you the card. So now with that, it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's panels of esteemed mayors. The mayors are Becky Ames from Beaumont, Texas, Keith James from West Palm Beach, John Giles from Mesa, Arizona, Dan Horgan from Akron, Ohio, Gary McCarthy, Schenectady, New York, James Langfelder, Springfield, Illinois, and Shane Bemis, Gresham, Oregon. And please welcome the mayors as they join me on stage. Thank you. As Tom Cochran said, tonight we're going to be focusing on three issues: disaster recovery and resiliency, immigration, and data technology and smart cities. And first we're going to focus on disaster recovery and resiliency. From wildfires to hurricanes and earthquakes to flooding, natural disasters are a constant and appear often constant threat to cities across the country. Beaumont, Texas, and West Palm Beach, Florida are two very different parts of the country, but share similar characteristics and challenges when dealing with natural disasters. The two states are probably two of the most vulnerable states to tropical storms and hurricanes. So I have questions for Mayor Ames and Mayor James. How are your respective cities building resiliency against natural disasters? And Mayor Ames, we're going to start with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me here tonight. Glad to be here from Texas. We use a mapping, GIS mapping, and we overlay with the FEMA maps to actually real-time track our flood zones, so we predicted where we would be flooded the most in Imelda and Harvey. A lot of data is used, which I know our community development director, who's in charge of that, went to this school, yay.
Wow.
And he's very smart, so I know y'all are too. But we have had our share, especially since I've been mayor in the last 12 years, recently with Imelda, which was rain bans. Before that, Harvey, which was a rain event for 4 to 5 days. And before that with Ike, which was a storm surge. So they're all different. We prepare differently. But the other thing that I think helps a lot is self-reporting from our citizens. We have a 311 call center, and we use that during a natural disaster for citizens to self-report. And that works very well because it doesn't tie up our 911 system. And constant training of our staff. All of our staff, none of them work in their regular department for the most part when we have a natural disaster and when we stand up our emergency operations center. With Harvey, I'd like to tell a really quick story. I don't know how long I have, but this is interesting. I think it would be to y'all, but we have a pumping station that is been in the same location. We're 180 years old, so for 150 plus years, never been breached. 6 foot of water at the pumping station. We couldn't even get to it because our Neches River rose so quickly during Hurricane Harvey. And one of our engineers came up with a plan that we would go to our local industry, and they had 9 pumps that were getting ready to be shipped overseas. And we ended up placing those pumps on the banks of the Neches River, pumping the water out into our treatment plant. And we're able to get water at least to trickle in 3 days, when if we had had to wait till the water went down, we would have been 2 months at least. We found that we were constantly chasing the water, and it was very, very laborsome. So then we went to another of our local industries. We have a lot of local industry. That's what we stand for. And we built a barge, and we put the pumps on the barge so it went with the river, and we were pumping it. We got a lot of national attention for that, and I just have to say so much that goes to our staff. As the mayor in our city, I am the emergency management director, and I appoint the emergency management coordinator. But they do all the work. I'm there and I give direction, but they do a great job. And like I said, one of our main employees that is in our EOC with me went to your alma mater right here. So you should be proud. I am.
Great, thank you. Mayor James.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, cold weather, for welcoming me here from Florida. I believe the question was, how are we working to make our cities more resilient? West Palm Beach had undertaken a study, a resiliency study, to look at our city from a number of different angles and to advise the policymakers, the mayor and the commissioners on how we could make our city more resilient to natural disasters. I've only been in office for 7 months, but within my first 6 months, I had a Category 5, 180 mile per hour sustained winds storm 25 miles off of my coast, headed straight for my city. There was nothing in my campaigning that prepared me for what to do in that event. There's not a handbook that you go to. Fortunately, I had a very good staff, and we prepare, we drill for these hurricanes, these events throughout the year. But there are a couple of factors that make these storms not your grandfather's storms. One is climate change, and it makes these storms so much more intense. The building that we're in, our Emergency Operations Center, is a Cat 5 rated storm. Category 5, when it was built, 155 miles per hour. I was talking to my emergency management people, and they said, Mayor, this storm carrying winds of 180 miles per hour, we don't know what that would have done. So the storms, the intensity of the storms is greater. We are a coastal city, so sea level rise is also an issue. So even during non-storm events, we have flooding during what's called king tide, when you have a full moon. So we know those are areas of vulnerability, and we're expecting the completed resiliency report soon. But that's it's all about data, right? I mean, we've got to at least have the data that supports the decisions that we're trying to make. But the resiliency study is what we're doing to at least get the data to figure out how we can become resilient, and not to bounce back. We want to bounce back better. I'm sure as Mayor Ames will tell you, it's really life after the storm, whether it's flooding, loss of power, that you have to prepare your citizens for. The storm, the hurricane will come through in a matter of hours, but the recovery can take literally months.
Yeah, Mayor James, just responding to that point about recovery, what's one lesson, Mayor Ames and Mayor James, that you learned from your city or from others about recovery?
Well, this is going to sound kind of a cliche, but working together just to make sure we're communicating with our citizens so they know what's going on. Our ability to work with the state and federal governments to bring in the resources that we need. at the end of the storm while it's going on and after the storm. I think that is sometimes the toughest part is after the storm has come through is to get those resources there quickly for the citizens because they already have damage. But I think that the resources that we're using now, I didn't mention earlier, but it's called CityWorks and Crisis Track, which are the software programs that we are using, actually connects every single department within the city so we can put information in there. For instance, Imelda was so different from Harvey, even though we had major flooding with both. Imelda was rain bands, and we had certain areas of town that had never, ever flooded before that did. And that's why the maps that we use to get real-time situation analysis to prepare for that is so important, and to look at the flood zones, just to keep on top of that constantly. And we do that all the time, not just when a storm is going on. So I think that that would be the most important part, is just learning from every storm, because every one of them are different. And like I said, Imelda was shocking because the area that got the most water during Hurricane Harvey did not even flood. Near the Neches River, that was from the river rising, but the other parts of town that have never received it did. And so those flood bands changed. And like Mayor James said, we say Mayor Ames and Mayor James and hurricanes, right?
I like that.
Like he said, that's the most important, is to try to prepare to continue. And you can't 100% prepare, but there's a whole lot that you can do to make sure that what you've experienced before doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, I've been through 5 or 6 of them since I've been mayor. The 2 worst were probably, well, Ike was pretty bad, but Harvey and Imelda are in the closest to my mind in the last 2 years.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Totally different storms, though.
Mayor James.
Thank you very much. One thing we did pick up from down in your neck of the woods, Mayor Ames, was we recognized after the storm that hit Houston, I forget which name it was, that flooding was a major, major issue. And so we, some members of our fire department, got certified in freshwater rescue. Actually, the only team in the state of Florida that went through the rigorous training to get this certification. Recognizing that if we did have a major storm event, freshwater rescue would be very important. So we needed a team in place that could go to some of our streets and rescue people. And we're also available to help out at the state and regional level as well. The other thing that we had to learn, again, it's all about recovery, is we have updated our damage assessment capabilities. It's now all electronic. So we send out teams. As soon as a storm passes, we send out teams of employees, and they all have their assignments, and they will canvass the area. And they have these little, it's on their phone actually, it's an app, where they can record whatever damage they see, and then that gets fed back into the Emergency Operations Center, and we have a map there that could tell us where the most damage is. That helps us get resources out quickly. We have teams that are trained in how to cut through debris and trees and that type of thing. So each storm provides another opportunity for lessons learned, another teaching opportunity, but you have to take advantage of that. And so we are constantly trying to learn best practices from other parts of the country and from our past experiences as well.
Great. Thank you. So for other mayors, how are you approaching disaster recovery and resiliency in your respective city, which could look and feel very different? Mayor Horgan.
I'll be the first to grab the mic. First of all, thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Listen, a great resource that we found right away was FEMA will actually they took about 70 of us from the county in a collaborative effort and took us down and kind of took us through the paces of some disaster recovery, what to do, planning, those type of things. And the fire and police department do this on a daily basis. It was more integrating a lot of the other departments in, like public service and like these other things. We're not really prone to natural disasters in Akron. There's some flooding issues, maybe on a snow, but we've been dealing with that for 200 plus years. It's just having the resources to be able to do it, and I think the coordination to be able to respond to those things too helps. FEMA does it. They even came up to the city, put us through some more paces on drills and things like that too, which that helps. Practicing helps.
Great. Other?
Our staff always trains for disasters and major events. One thing I've learned, though, if you have a disaster and it does get a federal declaration, the key becomes the paperwork, to be able to do the accounting, to set up the accounts, to document the damages, to make sure that they're qualified for reimbursement. And so it's not something that your first responders are trained in, but to make sure your finance people and other staff have that skill set and are aware of what the process is, so that you can adequately and accurately document the damage that's been done.
And if you don't get the form exactly right, FEMA will reject it, right, Mayor Langfelder?
Well, it goes to coordination, and especially we had one that we had to react to a smaller community. And so it's different municipalities that can help you out. But most importantly, you should assess the assets within your own community. For ourselves, when we had a tornado, it was the unions that came out and helped us. And so mobilizing, being able to mobilize your community as quickly and as coordinated as best as possible. With regards to alerts, we do text alerts, but it takes some time for people to get engaged. But that's an important factor as well.
Great, thank you. Mayor Bemis.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. For us in Oregon, it's all about the Cascadia earthquake that is coming. They've been talking about it for 20 plus years, and it is like imminent at any time, so they say. So for us, it's getting all of our neighborhoods together, and then there's 26 cities in the Portland metro region, many of which use Portland for goods and services, and there's 8 different bridges that cross the Willamette River into downtown Portland. And what does that mean for our community if those bridges are down and whatnot? So the biggest thing that we have been fighting is apathy to it, because people have been hearing it for so long that they've just kind of gone tone deaf. But as it gets closer and closer, it seems like we're marshaling more resources together for awareness, more disaster preparedness, suitcases, et cetera, meeting places, and all of the normal things you would do. We don't have a lot of natural disasters in Oregon. I mean, it rains. Sometimes it rains a lot, but it's not natural disaster, tornado stuff that is seen in other parts of the country.
Great, thank you. So we're now going to turn to immigration. The United States Conference of Mayors Task Force on Immigration Reform was formed as the focal point for the conference's efforts relating to comprehensive reform of the nation's immigration system. The 2 mayor co-chairs, one's a Democrat, one's a Republican, Providence Mayor Jorge Elorza and Mayor John Giles are heading up this task force. And this is obviously, as Tom Cochran talked about, a very topical issue. Just yesterday, the United States Supreme Court heard oral arguments on the DACA, better known as the Dreamers case. And so, a question for you, Mayor Giles, what are the key issues the task force is currently trying to tackle? And then secondly, how are cities around the country responding, and most specifically, Mesa, Arizona?
Sure. Well, this is a perfect issue for mayors to tackle, because as you indicated, the task force is by design made up of, as a bipartisan effort. The co-chairs are one Republican, one Democrat, but really mayors view this issue and most issues as very much a nonpartisan or bipartisan effort. Sometimes people in my community will say, Mayor, why are you in Washington, D.C. attending meetings, or why are you going to task force meetings in El Paso? And they very quickly realize when we start talking about it that clearly the immigration issue is sometimes seen as a national issue, but it's very, very much a personal, family, local issue in Mesa, Arizona. So all you have to do is pull out the front page of any newspaper and you'll see what the issues are that we're dealing with. Obviously, DACA has been in the news as of late because the Supreme Court argument occurred just yesterday. But it's always something. Before that, we were battling the immigration or the census question that was going to have a huge chilling effect in cities like Mesa, Arizona, where 1/3 of my population are Latino, Hispanic folks, and probably 10 or 20% of that population is undocumented. So we're a fast-growing city, we would have been devastated, by an undercount on the census. Also, very much in the news as of late, you've seen the asylum seeker surge coming out of Central America, hitting the southern borders of the United States. Communities like Mesa, Arizona, we're 100 miles inland from the border, but ICE was calling the faith groups and the nonprofit groups in my community saying, pursuant to our policies, we only have a certain number of hours that we can hold these families with children. Either you help us, faith community, or we're going to be releasing these folks to the street. And with no funding, with no resources, those faith communities, who's their next call to? It's to the mayor. Mayor, what are you going to do? How are you going to help us with this challenge that we're experiencing? So for the better part of a year, we had multiple buses, dropping people off at the churches and the NGOs in my community from the administration. That this was their solution to the problem. So that's just, and we could keep going. So very much the immigration issue is a local issue. It's an issue that's on the doorstep of cities and towns. That's where it's being dealt with in real time.
Great, thanks, Mayor Giles. Other mayors, in terms of how you're responding in your respective community? Mayor Horgan, you can start us out again.
I'm unapologetic about how we need to be not only a welcoming country, but a welcoming city, of which we've declared ourselves. My grandfather fell off a boat from Italy and started selling vegetables, and 3 generations later, his grandson is the mayor of a town. I just had my granddaughter. We have capacity in the city of Akron. We need to grow. 56 years ago, we were at 300,000 people, and now we're at 2. We need more people. We've become a significant destination for Nepalese and Bhutanese refugees and immigrants. Now it's Syria and the Congo. Our arms are open, period. How do we transition and get people into housing and into schools? That's been an easy process for us just because it's kind of slowed down a little bit, but we're not going to stop saying, hey, listen, we're going to welcome everybody. We need to grow our population in the city of Akron, and I would say across Northeast Ohio, because people have flooded everywhere. You know where they flooded. They flooded here and all over the city, all over the country. We need more people, and so we're going to open our arms and accept everybody.
Great. Mayor Bemis.
Yeah, thank you. My city, again, shares a border with Portland. We have like 65 known languages spoken, and we're Oregon's most diverse zip code, which happened all in the last 20 years. So we've had a rapid transition in our community. We have made it very clear that everybody belongs in our community, that we want everybody to belong. It's not, you can come to Gresham and you can succeed in anything you want to do. As Mayor Giles said, it's very personal for mayors, because oftentimes we're sitting in the high school football stands watching our kids with kids that are probably illegal and parents that are cheering them on the same way we're cheering them on. And that's how mayors view life, is in the same way as you all do, because we are not removed from you. And that's why I think it's the greatest job in all of public service is municipal government and being mayors. But what we have tried to do is to focus. I don't think the country is as divided as we want to say that it is, or the talking heads want to say it is. When you get people breaking bread together and spending some time together and realizing that they still like each other, we move the community forward so much. So we have doubled down on as many community events as we can. We're holding community events almost once a month to just get people in the public space together and remember what we are and how we are. And we're finding great success in that. We haven't had as many issues as other communities have had, because we've very demonstratively said everybody belongs here.
Great, thanks. Mayor James.
Yeah, thank you. And sometimes the immigration situation can hit you in so many unexpected ways. 2 stories. One was the summer, the president announced, or the administration announced, that they were going to release a number of the immigrants from the various centers and ship them to predominantly Democratic states, including Florida. So when I came in to work that day, and the city had not been advised of this, we heard about it on news reports as well, but here we were having to prepare because the estimate from the sheriff was there would be like 100,000 of these immigrants that would immediately start showing up in our city. We had nowhere to put them, but we had to sit down as an administration, work with the private sector, the NPOs, to prepare. Now, it was a false alarm because it didn't happen, but you don't know where it might happen. And the second story is an outgrowth of the hurricane story. You don't know what happened with Dorian. It took that sharp turn right, but it set over the Bahamas for like 24 hours. So now we found ourselves the weekend after that storm had passed with a number of Bahamians who were showing up at our city's doorsteps looking for a place to stay. And we hadn't expected that, obviously. But again, you have to prepare yourself. You have to be nimble as a local government and anticipate and try to adapt and react to those situations. So you don't always have ample warning about an immigrant crisis in your city.
Anything from any of our other mayors? Okay, our next topic, thank you, Mayor Giles and the others. Our next topic is data, technology, and smart cities. Urban transformation is needed to deal with today's most pressing public service challenges. While technology alone admittedly can't solve every problem, it's a powerful and can be cost-effective tool for helping cities accelerate progress. As natural incubators of innovation, cities are stepping up and leading at this critical time. And I have individual questions for each of our next four mayors. And Mayor Horgan, I'm going to start with you. Unfortunately, the city of Akron has witnessed cyber attacks in your city. How has Akron responded to date, and what are the plans going forward?
Let me answer the first part. I was actually at the U.S. Conference of Mayors last year when the city was, it was malware. We found out who the patient zero was, so to speak. And fortunately, I mean, we've made enough of an investment over the years. Everything worked. All the security worked. Nobody got any personal information. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was not the mayor, and this happens. Somebody hacked and got some tax data. So we had built up some infrastructure. And as a city, I'm all about data-driven decisions and making the best ones and trying to really push some innovative things. On the cybersecurity, we figured out pretty quickly that number one, I had to fly right home because it was an emergency. To be able to do that, we're in the midst of 18 inches of snow too, but they weren't connected on that, even though the press wanted to tie those two together. I figured out pretty quickly that we had not invested enough over the years into enough of a framework to say, okay, we are resilient and we'll be able to withstand an attack a little bit easier. So I've put together a 3-year plan that we're starting to implement now. It involves some resources, it involves staffing, it involves all of those things. It's just something that people expect from us to do. But even in college, nobody ever said, hey, you're going to be a computer expert, because I'm not. And this was kind of the conversation I had the other day to the tech and IT industry, was that cities and government institutions have a certain need for call it domestic security when it comes to our information, because the data that we gather. How as an industry can you put together a business model that doesn't necessarily break the bank for us? Because I don't want to do things that I'm not good at. And I guarantee you we are not good at cybersecurity. I would rather hire somebody to be able to do that for us. Then I can go out and do the things that we're really good at, like plowing snow and digging up streets and causing construction delays and all those other things that we do. But really, when it comes to the cybersecurity, either we're going to invest in like tens of millions of dollars, or I'm going to outsource some on maybe the back end, on the hardware and the storing and cloud, and then we employ maybe the operational side and the software side to be able to do some of those things. So it's a complete different mindset for us to be able to say, okay, this is a whole new government service that we have to do. Well, like anything else, we should do it well. And so that's what that next 3-year plan is. It's going to be a significant amount of money, but people expect us and they expect their data to be secure. So we're going to make it secure by putting together a 3-year plan. I wish I could do it in 18 months. It's just resource allocation is kind of tough at this particular point because you have a lot of other things to do, but that's the plan going forward. In fact, I have a copy of it here somewhere, but I won't share it just yet. It's not public, but thank you.
Stay tuned. Mayor McCarthy, you created a Smart City Commission in 2016. Talk to us about the work of the commission and the City of Schenectady's work with National Grid to deploy a Smart City REV demonstration project. I might add that Schenectady has branded itself a smart city, a city at the cutting edge of technology and efficiency. Mayor McCarthy.
Thank you, and it's not just that we're a smart city now, but Thomas Edison came there 126 years ago and founded General Electric, so that I'm just looking to try and continue that history. But I did get some community leaders, a technical background, brought them together, formed a Smart City Commission, and we looked at how do you take advantage of some of the emerging wireless and sensor-based technologies? And initially, our problem was National Grid, the utility. They controlled most of the light poles, they had the wire, they had a lot of the infrastructure. They were I'll call them a typical utility that was not really interested in doing anything different. Over time, and just working with them and talking to them, that shifted so that they've stepped up, and we're now in the process of what's called a REV demonstration project. It's part of Governor Cuomo's plan to reinvent the energy vision in New York State. So as opposed to being a hindrance, Grid is now a full partner. And we're looking to do a full citywide deployment. Most of the smart city deployments that you'll see or aware of are really smaller areas. They're a neighborhood, they're a business district, they're a limited application. What we're trying to do is do a full citywide engagement so that everybody will benefit from it. And we're in the process, we've divided the city up into 4 sections. The first 2 sections, and they're somewhat complementary but at the same time competitive deployments, where we're replacing the lights with LED fixtures. It's a no-brainer, everybody's going to do that. But simultaneously putting on the light poles and on the light heads optical sensors, Wi-Fi communication protocols. Also, National Grid wants a low-pan network in place. And we're trying to also build in backhaul capacity to make sure that we have the ability to handle all the information that's going to be generated from these sensors, not only today, but going forward in 5 or 10 years. It's an exciting project. There's a lot of variables in it. We've got the city, we've got the school district, got the healthcare community. We have just community groups that we're trying to bring in, trying to make people aware of the potential, and again, laying a footprint. So it's exciting. We're in the midst of the actual deployment now, and look forward to keeping everybody apprised as we get down the road 18 months to 24 months.
Great. Thank you, Mayor McCarthy. And don't forget, if you've got a question, the hashtag is changing cities. We've already got some great questions, or an index card. Just hold up your hand. So the next question is for Mayor Langfelder. Springfield is engaged in an ambitious effort to expand its broadband network into underserved communities. How do you intend to fund this initiative, and how will you leverage the city's infrastructure?
Well, like Mayor McCarthy, actually we have our own utility. So that's been the struggle. You know, usually for-profit entities, they come in and lay the groundwork. We have our own fiber, dark fiber. We run it to the hospitals as well as to the schools. But we really haven't tapped into the magnitude of what it could lead to. Governor Pritzker this year had, through the Capitol bill, they've allocated $400 million for broadband deployment in rural areas because they're trying to connect everybody, but also with areas that are struggling economically. So in Springfield, we're taking a look at that, and really it leads to downtown Springfield, the medical community, but also our east side. You know, it's just like a lot of communities that have railroad tracks, rivers that really divided the communities. It has a high minority population. Economic development is struggling, and so this is our opportunity to really cross the digital divide with digital inclusion. And that's where we're taking a look at how we can use our infrastructure with regards to the light poles, as Mayor McCarthy had stated, but as importantly, how can we run Wi-Fi throughout that whole area and really do a concentrated effort. Usually, you go neighborhood to neighborhood, but this would be broader than that. There's an opportunity for, I call it an area that's a park, as it also has the Boys and Girls Club, some non-for-profits, but we can turn that area into a tech, rec, artistry area and tap into the young people's minds by giving them the digital wherewithal that they need, that others, right now we have other for-profits, they're all going out west because that's where the rooftops are, that's where the money is. And so really we can't thank the governor enough for making the investment from the state of Illinois to allow us this opportunity, so we'll put forward our best foot to leverage our infrastructure to make that happen.
Great. Thanks, Mayor Langfelder. Mayor Bemis, You've just adopted a relatively new data and technology plan. Describe it to us and what you hope to accomplish. Mayor Bemis.
Very good, thank you. Well, our data plan basically is taking everything that's available to us and figuring out how to get better outcomes for the communities we serve. I mean, it's pretty much that simple. It's collecting data that we already have or we're already getting with our partners or that we're getting from our citizens interface with the city, and then figuring out how do we ask the tough questions. Are we getting the outcomes we want in policing? Are we getting the outcomes we want in our fire department, our wastewater department, our parks department, et cetera? So I don't think we're not anything super cutting edge to any of the other cities that they're doing in terms of smart city stuff, but the thing that we really want to work on is our homeless population, and how do we get better outcomes for our homeless population. And by virtue of the county doing most of the homeless services, we have designed our own set of services now with homeless service specialists that we've had for about 3 years. And we're getting better outcomes out of our team than we were out of the county team. The county is sort of on an analog system right now, and we're trying to figure out how we can develop an app that would give us better data to get better outcomes for these individuals. In other words, how many people are we finding homes for? Are they staying in homes? What are the contributing factors that got them to where they were? What is making them successful? What is not? Nobody can answer any of those questions right now. I mean, I think we all have general, ideas that we would go to, but no hard data exists on that, partially because of the clunkiness of the system that is at the county. So if we can develop a system that interfaces with the county, and then the other cities in the Portland Metro region can interface as well, I think we can answer some questions that many citizens are asking, but more importantly, we can get people the right interventions at the right time and get them the right help that they need. So we're really looking forward to that next development stage of that app. So hopefully that will be before too long.
Great, thank you. And then Mayor Ames, Mayor James, Mayor Giles, what's happening in your front in terms of technology, data, and the like? Mayor Giles.
Well, I could say amen to everything that's just been, I'm looking forward to tomorrow when we start talking as mayors among these, because I have a lot of questions for my fellow mayors here. But yeah, we are to try to be a data-driven city. We've been part of the Bloomberg initiative for What Works Cities, and we've really that's revolutionized the way that we look at things. Everything now is based on data, from the way we fight crime to the way we deliver services. We are exploring the idea of becoming an ISP, an internet service provider now. You look at what happened in Chattanooga, we all thought, wow, gutsy move. It's ended up being a genius move. Look at what a great model that is. So I think there's some very innovative things being done in cities and towns across the United States when it comes to we are forced to be innovative because we have to stretch the dollar as far as we can, and so technology is a big way to do that.
Okay, great. Mayor James.
Yes, we are also taking steps. I won't say that we have dived in as deep as some of the other cities. We are sticking a big toe in it, proceeding with caution, but certainly want to be as data-driven as possible. We just recently invested in a pretty large software program for our development services, where people can get codes and permits and that type of thing. Didn't realize it, but for years we've been operating under pretty much a manual system. So the set of plans would go from one department to another department to another department. So with this new system now, all of those departments that need to stamp approval can review the plans electronically simultaneously. Seems like a no-brainer, but in terms of the technology required to make that happen, it's a pretty significant investment on behalf of the city. So things like that, where we're trying to look at particular applications where improved technology would help. One of the first things I did as the new mayor coming in was to hire a new chief information technology head, who I'm very pleased with, and he has some very exciting ideas. So we will continue to look for further advancements in this area.
Mayor Apes.
Yes, thank you. Like Mayor James, we are getting started, and this one of the reasons why I'm here, and I'm very excited about tomorrow as well. I mentioned earlier that we have invested in CityWorks, which connects really every department, but we haven't gotten that far. We've used it mostly based on what I've said earlier, hurricanes and national disasters. We were able to pinpoint with Imelda and Harvey where the rain was with that data that we have. So we're data driven in everything that we do in every single department. And so we are looking to, from a funding standpoint, along with information technology, to bring all of that together so we can better serve the citizens. Like I said, it's kind of a big toe in a way too, where we are starting, people can go online and we have apps for 311, a one-stop shop, those type things that they can go. But I think we need to take it further than that, because we're certainly a data-driven city, and our systems just don't talk to each other, and that's not good, because communication's the key, right? So.
Thanks, Mayor Ames. And what a couple of the mayors are talking about is the Mayor's Leadership Institute on Smart Cities, which literally starts right after this forum this evening. So as Tom Cochran has and continues to say, cities are where it's happening, where real work and real progress is being made. And it's so evident tonight. So I've got a lightning round question for each of the mayors. 30 seconds, no more. How do you keep your head above water? How do you keep your head above water given the dysfunctionality in Washington, D.C.? Mayor Beamish, you're up.
I think it's super easy. I mean, again, we're not removed from the people that we serve. So I can't send a mean tweet to somebody that I'm going to see in the coffee shop or that I'm going to see at the grocery store. And so we also have to govern. I mean, so you have to bring people together when you govern. And I think at the heart of every mayor is just a love, an absolute love for their community and the job that they do. I haven't met very many mayors that do not have that. And so the ability, again, to bring people together and remind them that they still like each other, and they do. I mean, it's magical when you get people together and you get them off CNN or MSNBC or whatever it is, and you get out in the parks and in your community, in your public spaces, enjoying each other, your children, and that's why we do the job. And there's no better job in all of American politics.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I don't Twitter either. I'm more for verbal communication, but we're the home of Abraham Lincoln. So when, going back to the welcoming city or the immigration question, what I try to do is, how do I keep people together? And so we passed a resolution with regards to using Abraham Lincoln's words, government of the people, by the people, for the people. So we're all here as one. We protect each and every one of us. If there's someone that's breaking the law with regards to violence to one another, that's when our police force steps in. They treat each other equally, and that's what it's all about.
Used to look at the federal government for leadership, for innovation, for creativity. I don't approach that anymore. Just you assume you got to solve the problem locally. Don't have any expectation that Washington is going to do anything for you. If they do, it's a pleasant surprise. If they don't, not disappointed.
I would only add that if you look to the federal government to solve your problems, you'll go blind. I will add this, and I'll make it the shortest answer. I think we are all up here, and I think we'll trip over ourselves talking about the love of our community, but you have to be, we're all political entrepreneurs, period. But you have to be authentic and be fearless, and I think that's the survival, is be authentic and be fearless.
Well, I could just say amen. What you see is the difference between national politics and local government. I mean, it's an apples and orange scenario. So as much dysfunction as you see at the national level, you're seeing a real renaissance at the local level. You're seeing mayors, maybe because of a leadership vacuum, sucked up into being the people that are getting things done.
Thank you. Mayor James.
I would second, third, fourth, fifth, all of that as well. As mayors, we have to get stuff done. We have to produce for our citizens. If their garbage isn't getting picked up, if their streets aren't being cleaned, they will run into you at the grocery store and they will remind you of that. They will call, they're calling City Hall, they're not calling the state capitol, they're not calling the White House. And so our citizens they demand of us to continue to do the work of government. And so that keeps you focused. But I tell my senior team that we have to remain aspirational in what we do. You can't get so bogged down in the forest that you only see the trees and you don't recognize the forest. My vision that I've articulated to my team is I want West Palm Beach to be a community of opportunity for all. whether that's in education, whether that's in employment, whether that's housing. I want my citizens, each and every one of them, man, woman, boy, and girl, to find an opportunity in our city to fulfill their potential. And when you have that aspirational, that North Star, if you will, you continue to keep the trains running on time, but it really gives you the boost, the energy to build a bigger, better community for all your citizens.
Thank you.
Well, it's grassroots, so as everyone else said, we just have to stay the course and not let outside forces to affect us, because we are the ones that see these people and our citizens in the grocery stores and wherever it might be. But I think the other thing is there's a party going on in my town. We have a renaissance going on with industry, $54 billion in proposed and announced projects. So everyone is very excited, and that makes my job a lot easier. Don't get me wrong, they don't like flooding, but overall things are going well, and it's allowing a lot of the young people to stay in our city when they, as far as we're about 120,000 people, they'd moved to Houston or Dallas or wherever it might be, and now they're staying because of that industry. And so that does help a lot when you can think outside the box and do things that you don't always do as far as a city's concerned. And as Mayor James said, I love that part. Don't get bogged down in the day-to-day and just balance it and be able to do the day-to-day, but still think out the box and have some innovative ideas that can really make a difference in the quality of life for the people we serve.
And I just want to thank each of you for your very inspiring comments. Particularly, we have so many students here that are all about public service. So let's hear what's on the audience's mind. So this is a question from John from Twitter. This is for any of you, how do you encourage innovation within your city departments when there are sometimes rigid boundaries that are often associated with bureaucracy? Or maybe you don't have that issue. Mayor Langfelder.
Well, when I was treasurer, I came from banking, and we had different databases in all our departments. Actually, Public Works had 3 different databases. So we created a centralized database, and then that led us to centralized collections, things of that nature, but to CityWorks. And so now that's it's kind of building on where you were at before. So CityWorks, as Mayor Ames had said, it's with all departments communicating, and we're slowly chipping away at that, because in government, information's power. So when a new administration comes in, a lot of times it's the protectionism of the employee. You know, they don't think they can be replaced if they have the information. So what we try to do is instill that culture of information sharing, succession planning, and move forward in that direction through technology and also through just social aspects.
Others?
It's something you have to work at every day, because there are those institutional barriers that have built up over decades, and people are, even though they talk about wanting to adopt innovation, people are inherently resistant to it. They feel threatened. And it's how do you create an atmosphere that encourages it? Sometimes you have to apply a swift kick here and there to motivate people in the right direction. But there's not a panacea for it. It's, again, just every day you got to look for ways to try and do things better, do them more efficiently, and instill that sense of pride in the individual worker to try and maybe take a little risk to do things different.
Great. Mayor Horgan.
I just want to add, too, there's a certain group of people that are unafraid of innovation. That's the next generation, and so we've gotten younger and smarter to do just that.
Good, thank you. So the next question is from Megan from Twitter. As your cities grow and change, how have you found success welcoming younger people, people of color, and previously underserved groups into your public participation and decision-making processes? And Mayor Bemis, I want to start with you, because you actually head up the Mayor's Youth Commission, which is part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And then we'll open it up to everybody.
Yeah, thank you. One thing that we've been trying to do in all of the mayors in the conference, and certainly through this task force, has been trying to mobilize as many young people as we can, help them build efficient youth councils where they didn't previously have any, where mayors didn't have any, help them get out to register to vote, and then show them how to do town halls. That was the first 3 tenets of the Mayor's Youth Summit that we did. But to the question, I feel like the question you asked, Gordon, is particularly is exactly where our community has been. We are the youngest in the Portland metro region. We keep getting younger. Young families have moved to Gresham chasing affordability. They can buy a home that's $100,000 less than Portland. So we have the young folks. We also have, again, almost all of Oregon's diversity is located within our community, and that has been, again, within the last like 20, 25 years. So we've had to figure out ways to be, which was traditionally an all-white, conservative, agricultural community, how to be inclusive and let everybody know that they belong. And part of that is what some of the other mayors have said, is to not be fearful and to speak truth. And so when things have started going on at the federal level that have split up our communities or tried to divide up our communities, we have tried from the mayor's office to demonstratively say no. So after the Charlottesville debacle where there was moral ambiguity out of the White House, we said, no, hate is not a Gresham value. We put it on every single municipal vehicle that we have, which is over 600 that now have a bumper sticker that says, hate is not a Gresham value, because we had new populations of diversity that probably clearly didn't know where their mayor or where their city government stood, and we wanted to make sure that they understood that they belonged even in the face of what was going on at the federal level. So again, mayor's leading the way on keeping communities together.
Yes, Mayor Giles.
You know, community engagement is something I'm sure that the folks here in school have taken multiple classes in, and so that we've tried to engage in that and done a lot of outreach, particularly through social media, particularly in the Spanish-speaking community. We have a wildly successful Mesa Facebook in Espanol that is it's off the charts in terms of its growth. I mean, the social media interest among our Spanish-speaking community just shocked me at how large it is. So community engagement generally, but I think you'd be surprised at how successful social media campaigns and outreach campaigns can be targeted at the different ethnicities and languages in your community as well.
Mayor Langfelder.
We have a structure where it's a mayor and then 10 aldermen. So what we did is when I came into office, we have ward plan meetings. So we went into each ward, especially the minority community, but throughout our city, and we engaged the public to get feedback from them, what's important to them from their area, but also citywide. So each alderman understood the priorities for each district, as well as city as a whole. And so that has helped. We just held one on our minority community. Someone came up to me afterwards. They said, this has been great. Usually I come to these meetings and it's just gripe, gripe, gripe. But this one was actually offering ideas, solutions, and the reality of it, we always followed up on it. We showed them what their comments were about and then how we reacted or resolved those particular issues if we were able to.
I think 2 things. One is me being the first African-American strong mayor in the city's history. We'll be celebrating 125 years this year. It speaks volumes in terms of the young people, young boys and young girls that look like me, or maybe even speak a different language, so they could see that the possibility that someone like them can be the strong mayor of the city that they grow up in. And I've been successful in attracting people of color to some of the more senior positions under me. So that is one thing, but it's got to be a conscious, intentional effort. Our commission, from an age standpoint, is relatively young and very diverse, both ethnicity and gender. But I do want to pick up on the community engagement piece, because I think that's also the other part of it. And that's another area in which we're trying to use technology to help us, because we have to be smarter about how we engage the community, whether it's a street project that's out there, a park that we're trying to get activated, and use technology so that folks don't feel like they have to come to City Hall to express their opinion on a particular matter. And we're all mayors up here. We know the people that come to City Hall are not coming to tell us how wonderful of a job we're doing. So we need to expand the people who are giving us their opinion. But that's a tremendous opportunity for technology to help us with the community engagement
Great,
piece.
thanks. So this is a question from Ed. And yes, technology, yes, data. Many of you talked about being a data-driven city. Sensors, But what about privacy concerns? How are you approaching that?
And the silence was deafening.
I know. Mayor McCarthy, start us out.
It's something that you have to, again, look at every day. And there seems to be also a function of age where younger people are more willing to have information about them accessible over wider ranges of platforms. Older people are much more resistant to that. And so it's an educational process to collect the data, to manage it, but to maintain the integrity. And again, it goes back to that cybersecurity. The city of Schenectady gets hit approximately 40 times a day with a major attempt to breach our systems. Now, we've got that in place, and I can say that very fortunate where we have not had a breach. And you look at all the sophisticated software that's out there and the protections that are in place now just diverge a little bit. And I was the chief investigator in the district attorney's office for 30 years, and my favorite bank robbery story was Midtown Manhattan, the late 1970s. It was a Friday night in December where an individual got what they said was a very fancy guard's uniform, had an out-of-order sign in a canvas bag that was stenciled with one of the major banks here. Went to the night depository, hung the out-of-order sign on the night depository, stood there in his guard's uniform with a canvas bag, and people just came up and dropped the money in. So you have to approach cybersecurity that same way, where you're looking at all the sophisticated ways, things that may even be sanctioned by foreign governments. But at the same time, you have to do those basic things to protect passwords, to protect access to your devices, your phone, your computer, and it's an evolutionary thing where, again, it's part of this forum coming out of here tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hopefully we're going to learn more about things that we can do and things that we should do in terms of policy.
Yeah. Mayor Langfelder?
Real quick, we're installing ShotSpotter technology in our violent areas to identify where shots go off, and our police can go in there understanding what weaponry is being used, how many shots are fired, things of that nature, and respond within minutes. And a media person asked me, well, and this is nose under the camel's tent with regards to listening devices. And quite frankly, I hadn't even thought of it at that point because you're trying to provide a community service. So we partnered with the hospitals. They're each chipping. We have two major hospitals. They're paying a part of the cost along with us. And so I think if you explain to the community what you're trying to do, it's not an overreach. It's really providing a service to address a community's needs, then it's acceptable.
Good, thank you. So many of you talked about, I had the lightning round question about how we have to go at our own. But this question reframes it differently. Cities bear the direct impact of climate change. However, the sources of the problem are complex and global in nature. How can cities drive a reframing of this issue to support positive change? Mayor Bemis.
I think it's all how you frame some of the issues. In Oregon, we're green by nature, and so we admittedly have a little bit more easier time in talking about some of the issues. But we took when I first became mayor in 2007, I signed the Mayor's Climate Protection Act as like the 350th mayor across the country to do that. I had no idea what I was signing, other than I knew that I liked clean air, and so I figured it was something I could get behind. We took our largest energy user in our municipal operations, which was our wastewater treatment plant, and we made it net zero over a 9-year period. So now produces more energy than it consumes, and it saves our ratepayers over $1 million a year. So when we talk about that, we talk about why it's green for the right cash money to our ratepayers, but we also talk about the back end of it, that it's green for the environment, and we have all of these other outcomes that come for it. And I think that in climate, actually, I think the only place in the country where things are getting done is in the cities. I think you can look at mayors all over this country that are innovating in ways that are affecting a better climate, but they're also saving ratepayers money in many of these different disciplines, which is a great place for it to be able to be spoken at in a nonpartisan way. Republicans are afraid to talk about it, and some Republicans are afraid to talk about it. But I think if you frame it differently, you can talk about it and get the same outcome.
Mayor Horgan?
Probably the most important part is that we had started years ago with the wastewater treatment facility, and I think a lot of us have gone that direction and achieved that, but you also have to institutionalize the process within your own department to get people in the city. This is 1,800 people to think about the same thing. You know, a lot of them just want to hop in the diesel truck and then just go. That's part of that culture change of saying, how are we going to do things a little bit different? The other part of this is that it is not inexpensive to do, and it's not an excuse. I'm just telling you that we have a $1.2 billion combined sewer overflow project that we're doing, which a lot of consent decrees that across the country, but it's put an onus on ratepayers because there's no federal help to be able to pay for this. In fact, we have the worst consent decree out of a federal judge that I won't talk about the federal judges or their responsibility, but we're allowed 0 overflows in a typical year storm, which means engineeringly we can't spill 1 drop of stormwater into the river. It's virtually impossible, I know, but we're going to spend $1.2 billion to be able to do it. Part of that is that, but we have to accept it because it's a Clean Water Act, and with the creation of the EPA, we finally have caught up, but we're paying for 150 years of industrial policy throughout the city, and we have to do it in a half a generation. To me, that's not fair. I don't mind having the argument about how we do those things, but how about if we spread out some of those costs into maybe my granddaughters can help pay for some of this too, as opposed to just us right now, which is there's a strong onus to be able to get these things fixed right away, and we can do it construction-wise. It's just paying for it's a little bit tougher.
Good, thank you. Mayor Giles.
Well, I think to answer your question, I think we can model good behavior for the federal government, and hopefully they'll be paying attention and they'll learn something. Again, environmental policy is just that. It's kind of a hypothetical, intellectual game in Washington, D.C., but that's actually happening is at the cities. We're the ones that are signing the contracts for renewable energy and building solar plants. We're the ones that are figuring out how do you recycle when the market has totally changed and nobody wants to buy your commodities for recycling. So those are the debates that are occurring at city council meetings. And the people's passion about the topic is being expressed at the local level and city council meetings. So that's where the good work's happening, and hopefully the federal government is taking notice.
Great, thank you. Last question. What can mayors or have you done to promote entrepreneurship in your respective cities? In fact, why don't we hear from all of you, but whoever wants to go first.
In the height of the Great Recession, we had a lot of vacant storefronts in like 3 certain segments of our city: our downtown, another area called Gresham Station, another area called neighborhood of Rockwood. So we sat around trying to figure out. I tasked our team with figuring out what can we do to incentivize small businesses that will work. So as the staff came back with a manual about this thick of all of the things that we needed to do, we pushed it back across the table and said, what if we just don't charge any fees that we've been charging these small businesses? And in fact, what if we come alongside them from the time that they come in to pull their first permit till the time they pull the string on their open sign for their business? And we did that. We waived no parks fees, police fees, not even a business license fee. And we populated over 200 new businesses and like 300,000 square feet of retail. Almost all of those businesses are still here. We called it the Garage to Storefront program, which was if you're making something in your garage or you're doing something and the last impediment to you getting to market happens to be the city, we're going to get out of your way and we're going to help you every step of the way. And it was very successful. We ran for 3 years. We actually sunsetted the program. We ran 3 symposiums a year for our small businesses where we came in and taught them how to do social media, et cetera. And it was a pretty successful program. I think you just have to be flexible and nimble in local government.
Mayor James.
Thank you. I was a small business attorney before entering politics, so I recognize the value of small businesses to a city's economy. So one of the things that I really want to work on is building an ecosystem, an entrepreneurial ecosystem in our city. We have a burgeoning tech community in West Palm Beach, and I have had conversations with them because one of the things I've been least satisfied with their work, and we've given them money as a city, is the amount of, or the lack of diversity among their groups. And that's not just West Palm Beach. If you look at the tech community throughout the country, that seems to be an abiding problem. But I'm a strong believer that entrepreneurism, inventiveness does not know a certain zip code, does not know a certain neighborhood, and we have geniuses throughout all of our neighborhoods. So it's our responsibility as a city to open the doors, and if we can collaborate and help them find another problem with small businesses is obviously access to capital. So if I, as a strong mayor, can be a collaborator and a convener to match up the hold banks and other institutions that have money with our entrepreneurs, that could certainly help. But I think it's got to be a very intentional effort to ensure that the programs that you are utilizing are reaching out to all four corners of your particular city.
Great, thank you. Mayor Ames?
Yeah, short answer is Lamar University is in our city and recently opened, if you will, a think tank where inventors can come in and they help with funding and they go through the whole process, and the city has partnered with them in doing that. So these individuals that are entrepreneur-led or they want to be have a very defined path to follow. And then once they get through that and they're ready to open a new business, we do a lot of what was said earlier. If it is one of the individuals we partnered with through the university, then we will waive the fees, any type of fee, and also try to steer them toward reinvestment zones where we've established throughout the city in areas that need it. So I think it's been very successful. Several new small businesses have opened up, which is something that we were really looking for because the majority of our industry is very, very large. And so it has made a big difference.
Thanks, Mayor Ames. Mayor Langfelder and then Mayor Giles.
Yeah, we've partnered with the Chamber of Commerce as well as a local foundation, Economic Development Council, and the University of Illinois Springfield to fund a Innovation Springfield, and that's a entrepreneurial small business hub. One of the businesses that came out of there is the Aware app. The Aware app was designed by a lady whose actual son was going blind, and so she navigated him through the high school. And so we placed beacons all through downtown Springfield, 200 of them, so you can walk around on your phone and now get navigational instruction either auditorially or through your site, and walk around downtown, and it actually connects the sites. Now she's taken it to the next level where she's going to translate it into 6 different languages. So this will go global, where you're coming to the land of Lincoln, visiting Abraham Lincoln's home. You can visit in your native tongue eventually with regards to that.
Well, for the last several years, like a lot of communities, we've had a small business incubator then in a city building where we provide subsidized rent, and our economic development office teaches classes and kind of holds people's hands, and there's been some great businesses come through that. But we're currently trying to take it up a notch in that we're partnering with Arizona State University in our downtown to build a campus. Then largely, the city is providing the infrastructure and spending $100 million on building buildings for them, and so our ask of the university was, hey, in this innovation district that you're the anchor, what we would like to get out of it is an outward-facing facility, an innovation studio in partnership with the business community. We have Boeing and Apple and some other great, advanced manufacturers in our city that are going to come in and partner with ASU, and so this will be a makerspace for innovators, folks that want to come in and build prototypes or get instructions in some of the high tech that some of these major manufacturers have access to. So that's under construction right now in our old city library that will sit adjacent to this ASU campus. So very excited to see where that takes us.
Great, thank you. Mayor Horgan.
Even more broadly, I think it goes back to the economic development strategy, and whether you're out there chasing an Amazon, I'm sorry, is that a bad word?
In New York, it's a little dicey.
Or entrepreneurship and innovation is also a plank in an economic development strategy. And so what we did do was we had an accelerator for years, but that's a verb, and people weren't accelerating out. And so we opened an open innovation hub for tech, and both tech and non-tech, called Bounce. You can check it out. It's bounce.org. It's been open 18 months, and we've seen dozens of businesses come in, grow, and then stay in the city of Akron too. So it's one part of that plank, or that I think a successful economic development strategy does a lot of those different things, which entrepreneurship and innovation is a key.
Great, thank you. Mayor McCarthy, you get the last word.
We've been fortunate. We've had about $1.5 billion investment in the last decade. We have accelerators. We've got co-working space. We work with the governor's program, Startup New York, which is no taxes for 10 years, both income and corporate. And so it's matching up the individual startup or an existing company who wants to grow with either venture capital or some of the other incentives that are out there. and just overall create an atmosphere and environment where they want to invest, they want to participate in the community, and there's a synergy that's growing too from different companies that are growing and learning from each other, and government is really not even part of it.
I think you would agree with me that this esteemed group of mayors deserve a round of applause. Thanks to each of you. And I also want to thank the audience, and as I said, if the audience will just remain for just a moment, because our mayors need to depart because their work is just beginning with the Mayors Leadership Institute on Smart Cities. So Christina will lead the mayors out. And stay tuned for the 3rd Annual Urban Transformation Forum next year. Thank you, and have a great evening. Thank you so much. Thank you.